How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to another installment of Tech Support Thursday, where you ask and I answer. I'm going to go back to about a week when I released the how to spec out a server for your home IT lab. That's where this first question comes from. And if you've got questions at any point in time, you can either ask them on this video, or you can, if you're watching a video, I typically do video-based responses versus responding as a message in YouTube, simply for the fact that I can typically cover more questions this way. So, um, there's a comment, very informative video, sir. Hi, Rob. Thank you for the video. How about costs due to power consumption? How do you take that into consideration? Good question. I'm really not. I don't have a tool or a mechanism per se that tracks power usage. Um, Although my brother-in-law does know of some tools, and they're relatively inexpensive, that you literally clip them onto the wire itself, or the plug, and it allows you to see how much power is being utilized. Um, so I honestly have no idea how much power is being taken per month, in like kilowatt hours or any other measurable term type of scenario. But I can give you, and this is just from a price perspective, I think the lab in total takes around $100 a month to run. So maybe 125, but that's just a guess. I really don't know off the top of my head. And that's just an estimate. I believe what it is. It used to be a lot higher. I know there were a while ago. This is probably a year or two maybe ago, um, during the holiday season. So from right around Halloween, Thanksgiving time until after the first of the year. Um, my wife likes to deck out the house in Christmas lights, and Christmas. She likes to decorate. That's like, she's got her name is Carrie, and she has a pretty. Um, it, we refer to it as Carrie Christmas because Christmas is her favorite time of the year. So I typically, she doesn't do a whole lot during the year when it comes to stuff like that. But Christmas is pretty much her thing. She loves Christmas, so I typically just let her do whatever she wants. So she becomes queen of the castle for that period of time, and she goes about and does her Christmas decorating. She decorates the ever living crap out of the house. I'm fine with it. To be honest with you, it's she does a good job at it. So for me, it's like, okay, it really looks like Christmas. It's starting to look like Christmas around the house now, and it's only the beginning of November. So, but that's just her thing, and she likes doing it. So I'm okay with it. I actually think it's kind of cool. So, where I'm going with this is around that same period of time, I had the typical rack that I've got built out now with a few servers, and uh, I had, I think it was like 7 or 8 routers and switches powered up, working, and operating and whatnot, and plus the hot tub, and um, we didn't have the smoker yet, but we were also running Christmas lights, and they would come on at night. They would run for a few hours, and then we had them on a timer where they would shut off. And uh, I think the power bill for those specific months, we were a little over $500, and but then after all the Christmas lights went away, we noticed there was about a 75 to $100 drop in the cost. So we have, on average, had probably a $250 to $300 a month power bill. That's just a common bill for us because that's just what we have. That might sound high for some folks, but that's average for. It's been at the average for as long as I can remember. So to me, um, I know not everybody's comfortable with that, but it's just how it's been for the longest time. So I'm gonna guess, um, the rack itself is about $100 a month if I had to. But you know what? It's one of those things where yes, it sounds high, right? You know, most if I talk to other people, they're like, "Oh, my power bill is only 150 bucks a month," and I'm like, "Okay, well, like, what do you keep your thermostat set at?" Because I am not somebody that likes to be cold. I live in the north. I live in the upper Midwest, so it's like, um, from end of November until mid-April, it's cold. Like it's below 50 degrees. So I've got the heat on, and I am not a cold. I don't like the cold. So wintertime, the house is between 74 and 75, and in the summertime, the house sits about the same. So we pay for the heating and cooling to be comfort, our comfort level, and so that probably means we pay a little bit more. I do not keep my house at 70 degrees. I don't keep it at 68. Um, I do not like being uncomfortable, so I will pay a little bit more for comfort. You know what? That's my prerogative. If you would rather wear a hoodie when you're cold than jack up the temperature in the house, that's your prerogative. So I pay a little bit more for the comfort. That's one of the things that I do. Um, so because of that, plus I have the rack of equipment in the basement. I've got an ASA firewall. I've got a 3750X switch. I've got currently 4 Cisco UCSC 220s deployed. I have a QNAP storage appliance. I have a computer. It's an old computer that I have down there that has a couple of really big hard drives in it that I use for video rendering. So I will edit videos on the computer that I'm recording on, and then I will copy them to my QNAP storage appliance, and then I will import them onto the other computer, and then I will go through and I will use that computer to do all the rendering. So I will have it'll go through Camtasia, it'll do the video rendering and all that type of stuff. So that's basically how we go about doing it. And then from there, I will move the videos wherever they've got to go and then upload them to YouTube and things like that. So I probably pay more for power than the average person, but the money that I make from YouTube is basically covers the cost. So I don't get rich off of YouTube by any stretch of the imagination. However, I do make enough money back from both memberships and from ad revenue and things like that to basically cover the costs of running the lab. So to me, it's kind of a wash, right? If you have if you are just running the lab just so you can study and earn a certification, and you're not using that lab to do things like I do, whether it's customer demos, learning a new technology to do your job, or whatever the case might be. If that's not if that's what you're leveraging your lab to do, but you're not trying to monetize it at any level, then you're probably not going to get the same level. You're not going to get anything out of it, right? The lab basically pays for itself. There is a small cost associated to it, but the what I get paid in YouTube revenue pays for the lab. So that's how I justify it. And as far as I'm concerned, yeah, I went out and just bought a new server on Monday. I bought an HP ProLiant DL580 G7. I've got a 40 core 256 gig server on its way. It's in transit. I just checked it a little bit ago. And that is going to be replacing a couple of the UCS servers that I've got because it just has a much higher core count. So I'm planning on some of the labs that I'm working on building on that literally just chew up an entire server with one Eve instance. I'm replacing some of the servers that are running Eve with this HP box, and I'm going to be converting some of these other servers over to physical ESXi hosts that I'm going to be able to lab up and stuff like that. So my goal is to have a dedicated ESXi lab in my home lab so that I can play with things in a real world scenario. So instead of doing everything virtualized, I want to do things that are physical. So I take it a little bit further along. Since I have VMUG licensing, it's something that I've been kicking around for a long time. I know. So sorry, I don't mean to sit for 10 minutes on one question, but I had to explain myself. I felt like I needed not that you guys would care about the justification, but but that's also the consideration piece as well. So the other question in here was Thanks again, Riker. Yeah, the gamer PC was a suggestion since some of us have no possibility to afford such a nice real hardware like the ones you just showed here. But yeah, totally. CPU and RAM need to be the primary targets to allow the proper growing and scalability when creating complex topologies. I'm living in Brazil. I'm Chilean, and the hardware here is hard to get. Keep up the videos. Cheer. I completely understand where you're coming from. It can be very, very costly, especially if you're, um, eh, especially if getting the hardware isn't easy. I'm sure that is. On tech support Thursday, ticket 20. Hey Rob, this is going to be an unusual question. I'm a software developer. I have a master's degree in networking and I'm passionate about networking, but I have never had a networking position due to my geographical location. I literally live in middle of nowhere, Africa. There hasn't been a single networking job posting in ages in the whole country. So if you were in my shoes, how would you go about it? Would What will you do or learn to get into networking in those circumstances? P.S. I lab daily about topics at the CCNP level, multicast, L3 VPN, CE to PE routing, etc. I have one exam left to get my CCNP, after which I will definitely dedicate next year for the CCIE. I did respond to this directly, um, but and basically my response to him was, and he responded as well, is there's a couple different ways that you can look at it, and but I'm really not the person to give the advice on it because I've never been in that situation. I live in the U.S. where there's just about everywhere there's a job market, and there's job postings that pay decent salaries for different jobs that you might get. Um, so one of the things that I mentioned to him was try looking for something that's remote. You know, whether it's Africa, so he's going to be south of Europe, and the um, the the thing I recommended to him was maybe look for a job in the same time zone as him, so that it would be the same hour when you know, you'd get up at 9 o'clock in the morning, he'd work from 9 to 5, etc., and he would be in the same time zone or just about near it. Because I work with clients. I'm based out of Wisconsin, which is Central Time Zone, but I have clients that are East Coast, which is an hour ahead of me, and then I also have clients that work or that are based out of California, which is 2 hours behind me. So that's still their morning. So um, it just depends on the situation. So try to find something remotely, or you may have to geographically relocate. I know it may not be ideal, but um, I basically said if you're committed to your craft, you're going to be willing to do whatever you need to do in order to be successful, and um, you'll do whatever you got to do, right? And but what I'm not saying is you're going to have to move to find another job. That's not what I'm saying. You take all the different possibilities that are out there, and somebody else commented they might want to reach out to people that live in that scenario and see what they've done. Because it's really hard for me to answer that question because I've never been faced with that situation where I'm like, I live in the Milwaukee area, but there's no jobs in Milwaukee, so I have to work out of Atlanta or Los Angeles or whatever. And I've worked with clients in both LA and in Atlanta, and to me, it's one. There's really no difference to me. It's a network. I really don't care where they're out of, but I'm very fortunate that I work in a country where there's a large geographic area and there's lots of work. I mean, there's always going to be a network that needs to either get refreshed, somebody's doing something to it, or whatever. Job security for me. Thanks for answering my question. I think I'm going to go with CCNP next since I just recently passed my CCNA. Congratulations on passing your CCNA. That's a big deal. And good luck on CCNP. Hi Rob, what made the difference in your career, meaning the big leap or salary? Is it CCNA, CCNP, or VMware? I know I already answered this, but I'll answer it again. It basically just means that when you're doing stuff with your certifications are going to be a way to justify, or to at least for you to attempt to justify either requirement of how much money you want or something along that. But basically, the bottom line is when you're looking at a potential job, whether you're just trying to get into the industry or you're trying to move up in the industry, just about everybody I know started at a entry level position, right? We all started. It's very rare for people to go directly into a networking position. It's very rare. Um, and when I was in my last job as a full time instructor, I used to tell people that yes, it is possible to bypass help desk and desktop support and go directly into a networking gig. The problem with that, though, is typically the people that are working on either the network or the systems team, your more mid to senior level engineers, guess where they started? They started in help desk and desktop support and worked their way up. I did the same thing. Now, it depends on your personal history. Have you been working with technology since, you know, is IT something that you always have done? Or is it, or you have always been computer savvy? There's something that a lot of people tend to miss. I see a lot of people that have never had a technical, especially people that have never had a technical background, meaning that they've never gone off and learned, maybe they worked in a different field and they weren't really techie. If you were to start talking about an operating system, they wouldn't know how to restart the computer, or they wouldn't know what an SSID is for Wi-Fi. Um, there are a lot of people that know just enough. Like they have a computer, and that computer is literally for them to open up a web browser, go online, check their Gmail or Yahoo account, log into Facebook, maybe do some online banking, download some games, and play the games on their computer, or chat with people online. Whatever that life looks like. If that's your level of technical proficiency, then you are never going to get a network job out of the gate if you don't have a strong background in computers. And the reason why I say it that way isn't to be mean; it's to be realistic. Because people will, if you are sold a bill of goods with no technical background, right? You don't know what an IP address is, or you know, uh, if you don't know what the internal components of a computer are, or how to work with them, then you're if you're sold a bill of goods that you can go directly into a networking position by bypassing help desk and desktop support and moving directly into a networking position, then you've got the wrong expectation. And I've said this many, many, many times because it's not real. Now, however, if you are somebody that is like me and you were working on computers when you were really young, I've been basically playing with computers my entire life, and I'm almost 40. So I started with a computer. I think I was 7 or 8 years old. My dad had a computer in the house. There's always a computer in the house. By the time I was it 10, 11, maybe? I don't even think I was that old. My dad worked with computers on a regular basis. I knew how to rip everything out of a computer down to the motherboard, pull the CPU out of the socket, put new thermal compound on the CPU, put the CPU back in, or put in a new one with the right pin out, and rebuild the computer from scratch. And then put an operating system on it, get it working, download the drivers. Back then we used to have to deal with IRQ issues. So, yeah, back when you still have to deal with IDE, and, you had to have the jumper in there to switch between master and slave if you had more than one hard drive. Um, so in Molex and all the, dealing with the BIOS battery and CMOS and all that type of stuff. So I've been working with computers since the early 90s. So for me, yeah, when I started studying technology and to be making it my career, I didn't have to spend a long time learning all this stuff as an adult. I already knew it, right? And that accelerated me because now all I had to do was take it to the next level. I had to advance my skills to a level of, okay, how does the operating system work? How do you take the WIM file? How do you open up Windows 7 or Windows 10 and then take the Windows updates from WSUS and the update service and then dump them into the OS directly? and then build an image out of that with all the, the right desktop background and all the applications were already built into the image, and then you just go and deploy the image directly to a computer. So there's a lot of stuff in there that I see people don't have that level of proficiency. They're not there yet. And when you don't have that and you're just getting into the industry, you're just trying to understand how, like, so for example, if you started with A plus, the CompTIA A plus, you started there, um, and then you're working your way up, maybe Network Plus and CCNA and stuff like that. You're looking at a couple years of ramping up in order to even think that you can hold a spot at the table where the network team is. So these are some things that come into play that need to be understood. So, and where I'm going with this is there is going to be a leap from where you start in the IT industry. Most people are going to start like for example, I have a 19-year-old son. He's going to school for welding right now. And he's doing really, really good in it. He actually really enjoys it. He gets good grades in it. He's actually, he took on a side project for school because he's got the access to the materials and stuff like that, where he had the ambition to, he wanted to build a coffee table. And because he's learning how to weld and all the different types of welding that there are, it's just, he's got a knack for it. It's almost like a natural gift. That just picks up. He's natural at it. Like, he's just gifted in that area. He likes working with his hands, and I'm all for it. And yes, I am paying for his college, 100%. There is no financial aid here. Dad's paying the way, and you know what? Both kids are gonna get the same treatment, because when I was his age, there was nobody helping me out with college, and it took me, I don't know, 9-10 years to pull my head out of my back door to figure out where I wanted to go in life. So I'm trying to take that 10-year learning curve that it took me to get into IT and put him at the front of the line when it comes to being successful in life. That's my job as a dad. But there was nobody doing that for me back then, right? So he enjoys doing that type of stuff. He found this thing that he wants to build. I think he found it on Pinterest, if I'm not mistaken. I forget where he actually found it, but he wants to build this coffee table out of square tubing, and it actually looks pretty cool. He showed me some pictures. I watched him draw it out, do all like the design and engineering thought processes, and then he showed me some pictures on his phone yesterday. When he went to school early yesterday. He was at school like 6:15 in the morning, and then he was up early this morning to go. But I'm actually proud of him for that, because he's showing initiative and ambition in something he wants to do. He's got the drive to go do it. And you know what? More power to you. So each semester is costing around $2,000 for him to go to school, and I'm okay with that. It's $2,000. Okay, fine. If it costs me $6,000 to send you to school, guess what? Your school is bought and paid for. You get some certifications along the way. You get a technical diploma. You can go right to making, $20-$25 an hour. Hey, you know what? That's some pretty damn good pay for a 19, 20-year-old kid. So with just a little bit of college under his belt, but it's a tangible, skilled labor, right? Well, the same thing applies to networking or in IT. You've got to start somewhere and working your way up the ladder. Well, he is doing the same thing with the welding thing. So he's doing all that type of stuff, and he's enjoying it. I saw some pictures of it, and as I'm looking at it, I'm like, are you going to put a tack weld on the little lip here and a tack weld over here on the lip? And he's just like, he looked at it, he kind of turned his head. He hadn't thought of that, but different perspective on stuff. And he goes, yeah, I probably will have to. He goes, we can always add to it. I go, yeah, that's fine. I'm just asking. But it's cool to see his mind work and see the interest and the ambition to do what he wants to do. I have a 12-year-old who is he'll be 13 in April, and he will tell me that he wants to be like his dad. He wants to be a CCIE engineer. He really doesn't have a clue what this thing took to earn. He has no clue. But I earned it 6 years ago, so he was 6, and it took me 3 years to study for it. So from the time he was 3 until the time he was 6, I put a lot of effort in getting my CCIE. But he doesn't really understand what the level of effort is that's needed in order for that to be done. But I'm like, well, we could start you at CCNA. We could start working your way up. You know, and I'm all about starting the kids young and working their way up. Both kids tried, or I should say, the oldest tried. He didn't like IT. You know, that's fine. Each one of them is going to find their own path. But the the jumps that are made are when you have put enough time in at a certain level and you've got enough experience and enough technical understanding to where you can go to the next level. And the only way you're going to get to the next level is by bringing your level from, like, let's say you get into, you're doing desktop support, right? You're a help desk. You're just answering calls for easily fixable things, whether it's password resets, changing, adding an email account, or adding an account to Active Directory, little things like that are basic things to do at the help desk level. I know not everything's easy, but there's a lot of easy things that you can fix and to do at the help desk level. Then typically you're going to go to desktop support where you're handling more complicated level 2, typically more difficult things to deal with. Multi-factor authentication isn't working, for example, or this user isn't able to log into their computer, or their phone's not registering to call manager, or whatever the case might be. You'd field that, and then if it's outside of your scope, you'd escalate that to the appropriate team, right? And that team, whether it's the network team, the systems team, the security team, those are going to be the escalations that you're going to work with that are going to help you get to where you want to be. But at the same point in time, each time you go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, the only reason you're getting to that next level is because you brought your knowledge level up to that level and you're performing at that level, right? They're not just going to say, okay, here you go, here's the next level position, and you're not prepared to sit in it because you're not going to be successful, right? You have to, in order for you to get promoted to the next level, you should be performing at or above that level. So it becomes, when you get promoted, there is no, oh my God, I have all this extra work. No, you're already at that level. You're already doing that particular position's level of effort, and you're there already, from a technical and a performance level, right? If you're not there, you might have a little bit of room, growing room, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's where the bumps come into play, right? Certifications will probably help with some of the technical pieces, but there's more to it than that, which is why I'm working on the real world networking component, because there's parts of this stuff that certification doesn't mean a damn thing, right? No one's going to give a crap if you have a CCNA or a CCIE. It doesn't matter, right? The certification, once you have the job, is irrelevant, right? Nobody cares how many certs you've got. They might, and the reason I say it that way is because if you go to your client and you're trying to justify your value, to your manager or to your client by saying, "Hey, I've got one of these." Okay, fine, great. You've got one of those. Now perform to that level because you've got one of those, right? You should be able to do CCNA level work. And I've worked with people that have got CCNAs and struggle to do basic things that a CCNA should be able to do. For example, create a VLAN or add a VLAN to a trunk link. Those are basic things that a CCNA should be able to do. You may be hesitant the first couple times that you do it in production, right? Because you don't have a lot of experience. But as you gain experience, those things should become second to none, right? Or you should just know what to do, where to do it, what to verify, how to double check, things like that. That's where the leaps come into play, is the level of understanding, the level of experience, and what you're capable of doing. Now, there's a lot of things that I don't know how to do. I don't know how to automate networks. I don't know how to script. But you know what? There are people that do. And those people I look up to and I reach out to. Hopefully that answers your question. I know it does, but those are the things that you should really do when it comes to doing the bump. And then there was, thank you, Rob. Yes, it's front door VRF, which is what a question I answered last week. Okay, so VMware Data Center 19, vCenter Distributed Switch Overview and Deployment, really cool. How do set its IPs of these port groups? How do I set its IPs of these port groups? Sorry, it's the English is not the first language here. So the answer to the question is using a VM kernel adapter, and the VM kernel adapter can be mapped to a port group, and the port group will basically be the VLAN, and the VM kernel adapter will basically be the interface VLAN, or the switch virtual interface, or the SVI, and that's where you apply your IP address for the port group. Once you do that, then you're going to be able to go through and map out any services that are going to be mapped to that. So, for example, if you're creating a port group for vMotion and you want to be able to vMotion a VM between two ESXi hosts, that port group exists on both hosts, that each host has a VM kernel adapter in the same subnet with the same service enabled, vMotion, and then once you have that in play, you should be able to vMotion between hosts. Another comment on tech support Thursday, ticket 20. Come on, Rob, just be yourself. We need such a grumpy guy as you are. You don't need to explain your position for everyone who did nothing but mumble in comments. We appreciate your work, especially you are doing it for free. Best regards, Philip. Appreciate that. And that comment is in regards to some negative feedback I got on my lack of people skills. So, you know what? That person has not commented since then, and I'm okay with that. If they just came by to troll, I play with trolls the way that I play with anybody that gives me negative feedback. It's like, sorry. Well, sorry, not sorry. How to spec out a server for your home IT lab. Hey Rob, this was super helpful. I'm running EVE-NG on a dedicated laptop bare metal install and want to move in this direction. When you have a chance, can you share your larger EVE-NG VM specs and recommends? Thank you, sir. Yeah, so in a situation like this, they're really, really basic. The servers that I showed you, I basically will give an EVE-NG instance, say 16 CPUs and 64 gigs of RAM. It makes it pretty easy to run just about any size topology. If it's going to be much larger with a lot of multi-CPU QEMU images or instances, I will typically give it a higher CPU count. But I don't really pay attention to the utilization of the Eve host, of the Eve instance itself. I pay attention to the utilization of the host that the Eve instance sits on. So if I have 35 gigahertz of compute for a server, and I've got one Eve instance deployed on it, and I gave that server 16 CPUs, well, I'm probably going to be maxed out on CPU on the Eve instance, but I might have 60% utilization on the server. So that's how I look at it. I don't look at the utilization of the instance, but if I give the instance enough CPUs to kind of match what's going on with the host, then things are going to work out better. SD-WAN 19, Service VPN 1, NAT. Oh, sorry, skipped one. VMware NSX overview. Oh, this is an old video. Question: the controller VM you mentioned, that would link between the DLRs and the physical L3 gateways. Wouldn't that be the ESGs? And I responded to that. And the controller VM, for if you are dealing with NSXV and you're deploying a DLR or Net Services Gateway, distributed logical router, if you're deploying a DLR or an ESG, you don't have to deploy a controller VM, but it makes more sense to deploy a controller VM. And the controller VM is going to be the control plane for the instance deployed. And what that will do is for every DLR and ESG that you deploy, you're going to deploy a controller VM. And that is not the ESG itself. The controller VM is basically the virtual machine that helps control the DLR or the ESG. So it makes more sense to do that. The ESG can be connected to the DLR through a logical switch. If you are trying to your DLR is installed on your ESXi hosts as it's the default gateway, and to terminate all of your logical switches that are deployed on your ESXi hosts. And if you're just trying to do east-west traffic inside of your host, then the DLR is all you need. If you want to go outside of the ESXi host to the rest of the network, the ESG is how you do that, and then the ESG would have a VNIC that is connected to the logical switch that connects you to the DLR, and it would also have a VNIC that's mapped to a physical adapter, so that you could connect the ESG to the outside world. So in the NSXT world, you're going to have a logic segment that's going to be mapped to a tier 0 gateway, or I'm sorry, tier 1 gateway. Tier 1s are just below tier 0. Tier 1 gateways are going to basically be your distributed router. And then you're going to have a connection to a tier 0 gateway, which is going to act as the ESG. The tier 0 gateway is what will connect to the outside world. The tier 1 gateway never connects to the outside world. It's always a inside of the ESXi host type of connection. If you want to do a single level architecture, you can deploy tier 0 as the DLR and the ESG in the same box and have them terminate logical segment gateways, and also set up your BGP peerings and your OSP peerings to the outside world. That's a possibility. But more often than not, people go with a 2-tier architecture where they have tier 0s at the top, tier 1s at the below, north-south wise, and then the tier 1 gateways are going to terminate all your segments. There's going to be an auto-plumbed connection between your tier 1 and tier 0 gateway that you used to have to manually plumb in NSXV. This is automatically plumbed with the 169.254 address range, and then your tier 0 gateway would connect to the outside world via BGP or OSPF. And I'm going to be covering NSXT here very, very soon. I'm actually working through some things on it right now, and I'll be showing you guys how to get it up and running. Let's see here. Service SD-WAN 19, Service VPN 1, Dynamic PAT, Local Internet Breakout. Thank you, Rob. Finally, a clear, concise demo on how to get local internet breakout working. You are welcome. I only got a couple more. Hey, on Ticket 20, hello, Rob. I just found your channel, and I can't believe it. It's like a gold mine, and I'm amused for all your content. I'd really like to ask you one question. Why you have decided to go for ESXi and EVE-NG instead of EVE-NG bare metal? I see the flexibility with the first one next to the latter, but maybe I'm missing something. That's it. That's just flexibility of being able to deploy multiple EVE instances. That's it. I've done bare metal. I personally don't care for it. Simple as that. So going back to the question, I just answered this guy's question a minute ago. Hi, Rob. Thank you for addressing my question about power consumption. Would it be possible to give a rough estimation on how many kilowatt hours per day such a server would consume? For example, a home server for working through your Nexus 9000V VXLAN playlist. I would also rather keep the server always on background. I'm currently evaluating the pros and cons of buying servers, renting a bare metal server online. I will always say buy the server and have it on-prem, because then if something does happen, you have to go through the steps in order to get everything working. So for the ease that you get with doing something bare metal or hosted something online in Google Cloud or in AWS, you gain a lot more practical experience by spinning up a server and getting it working in your home lab. That's just, to me, it's you get more out of it. And then another appreciation comment on Ticket 20, and then on NSXV 32 UDLR and ULS VM testing. Isn't NSX getting deprecated and replaced with NSX with T? Yes, but as I've said repeatedly on the channel, when it comes to V and T, just because it's getting deprecated doesn't mean it's not going to be that every customer is going to just stop using it. There are customers that are going to continue to use NSXV and more than likely have some sort of either decommissioning process that they're going to work through to turn it off or migrate to NSXT. I'm working with quite a few clients right now, and multiple NSX engineers where I work now, and we're putting in the effort with lots of customers to get rid of V and move to T. Some customers are just removing V completely and deploying, going back to the old school architecture of distributed switches and trunk links. Some are taking it and migrating to T. It depends on what everybody wants to do. So just because V is being deprecated in January, or I should say end of support, if you still have V running and you want support, you're going to end up having to pay probably through the nose to get VMware support, but they're not going to leave you hanging. But they're going to push you to get T. And if you haven't already started looking at T, you should be. T is freaking, it's awesome. I love T. But that's it for this installment of Tech Support Thursday. If you guys have any other questions or comments or anything like that, please let me know, and I'll catch all of you guys in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take it easy, guys.